Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Curriculum Committee meeting.
Yes, it's mine.
Well, that's yours.
Yeah, there you go.
Anne-Marie just interrupted us for a second, but we'll move forward. President is Mr. Potts, myself, Mr. Shaheen, Mr. Kurtz, and Dr. Otto. From the staff is Mr. Henkel and Mrs. Trainer, and I just drew a blank, Mrs. Torsha. I'm sorry. We have 4 participants in the audience. I think anybody who has not been to any one of my committee meetings, it is an open forum. You can just give me a little nod and I'll recognize you. You don't need to go to the podium. I don't particularly really care if you want to tell me who you are. I think we know who everybody is anyways. But we like to keep it informal. We have 2 things on the agenda tonight. We're going to be talking about the district assessment report that Mrs. Trainer normally provides the entire board, but hopefully to shorten a board meeting, she's going to give us the down and dirty and then the very, very high level report back to the board, if even that.
I heard you were doing that.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to say, here's your binder. If you got any questions, get a hold of Mrs. Torsha.
Not even Dr. Otto.
Not even Dr. Otto. I cut you out on that one. And then we're going to talk spend the majority of our time going over the high school program course selection guide. I've been in conversation with Mr. Henkel on some ideas, and we've talked some things out. So we have what hopefully we'll bring back as a recommendation back to the full board for the course selection guide. And then finally, the last topic will be future meeting dates and topics. Just as a point of reference, moving forward, this meeting will be the first Wednesday of every month, not Thursday. That has been adjusted because one of our members, Mr. McLaughlin, could not make Thursday nights. And with Mr. Kurtz at school, that would mean it would be just Mr. Potts and I sitting up here. So I'd like to have at least 3 board members present with one calling in as needed. So.
Well, that makes it easy because Wednesday's becoming our committee night.
Okay.
Our revenue enhancement is the 3rd Wednesday and policy is the 2nd, so people can start counting on Wednesday nights for committees.
Good. Okay. Any questions before we get started? Floor is yours. Finished yet?
Tough crowd. Tough crowd.
Yeah. Well, I've been through this 8 times now.
I don't know if you had been on the board when we did these before, but each year somewhere in December, January, we put together a compilation of all of the data from the previous school year for all of the testing that we did. Sometimes comparisons, just sometimes single year. And the first few slides, you'll actually find in the front left corner of your binder is a copy of the short presentation.
At this point, Mr. Gagnon will be leaving.
That's right. This actually came to be a district presentation back around 2000 when No Child Left Behind came into existence because there were so many complicated
Class of 2025.
restrictions from No Child Left Behind that it was difficult to understand some of the data. So just as a review, if you haven't seen this before, in previous years, prior to this current school year, 3rd through 8th grade and 11th grade took PSSA tests. And that was part of this binder's result documentation that I would present to you. This current year, that changes. 3rd through 8th grade take the tests that are up on the screen, combination of reading, math, possibly science, writing, or all of them. And the 11th grade and some other students in the high school, depending on what subjects they have completed, take the Keystone Exams. And beginning next year, the report on grade 11 will be based on the results of Keystone Exams as opposed to PSSA. And so this year, they'll be taking a literature Keystone Exam, an Algebra 1 Keystone Exam, and a biology, but the results of the Algebra 1 and the literature will be how there's a determination of whether or not the high school makes AYP. There's some questions about how that's going to be determined, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Beginning with the class of 2017, which is the current 8th grade, those tests will be required to be passed for graduation.
I know you mentioned, is it okay if I interrupt? Just with a few
Absolutely.
questions.
Little late now.
That doesn't count against my time.
Oh, yeah, I messed up last year with that.
Yes, you did.
You mentioned that the Keystone exams will go into effect next year for counting, I think?
For AYP,
AYP.
No, they'll be this current school year.
Okay.
What they take during this current school year will be how Mr. Henkel will be graded for meeting No Child Left Behind.
Okay, all right.
The graduation requirement, I believe, goes into effect to the class that is currently sophomores, correct?
Is that 2017?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
So sophomores, so those juniors this year, sophomores, yes.
Okay, because I knew we were
It's eighth
taking...
grade.
Oh,
Yeah, it's eighth grade.
well, they kept moving it back. They kept moving it back
It's
because
the 8th grade, it's the class.
I knew it was sophomores, but they kept moving it
Sophomores are the
back.
class of 15.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I know they were taking the Keystones.
So it'd be
this
the
year.
8th grade
Is that
class
all
this year.
students taking the Keystones?
You
or
have to have
just
completed
11th
the
grade?
course.
No, it's those who complete the class.
So after you take Algebra 1, then you can qualify to take the test.
Okay, the standardized test we were taking just recently, though, at the high school level, or we're going to take in the next few months, are those Keystones?
Keystone's being taken
Next
we
week.
took the one, the lit in December, algebra and bio next week.
Okay, and those are, they go toward No Child Left Behind
Just
requirements?
the algebra and the literature, not the bio.
Now, who has taken the algebra and the literature?
Anyone that's completed the algebra.
I mean, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to give somebody who is a junior having to take the algebra test when they may have taken algebra 2 years ago.
They had to take it.
It's a requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what the teachers did in the fall was they tried to do a review of those concepts in order to ready them for the.
Well, again, I mean, a review of the I mean, it doesn't
No.
seem like it's really. I mean, I don't know how it's going to be moving forward.
Right.
And yes, Anne Marie, this does count against your time. I don't know how this is going to move going forward, but if you take algebra, the spring of that year is when you would take the Keystone, right?
Right.
When you take biology, the spring of that year is when you take the biology, because some of these kids are 2 years beyond biology and
This
taking.
is the cleanup.
I mean, hell, I was a biology major, and I think I would have a real tough time with the Keystone exam in biology, having not touched some of that material in
Right.
a number of years.
2 years ago, they did take the biology Keystone exam, and those scores got banked, and anybody that was proficient did not have to take the test. So we do have some students who had banked scores. And you may have no, okay.
Is that going to be how it's going to work in the future, too, or is that just an introductory
Yes,
thing?
if you take any of the tests, I'm sorry. If you take any of the tests currently until you become an 11th grader, they get banked as long as you're proficient, and then that will go towards that that year that they become
Okay.
scores.
That's interesting.
Then that goes towards the AYP.
What do the students do then? That's kind of an ancillary conversation, I guess. Can they go home when their peers are taking the test? If
Next week,
scores
the
are
seniors
banked?
don't come in.
Seniors aren't coming in next week.
So,
Okay.
10:30,
All right.
Sleep in.
How many days is that, all week?
no, just 9th and 10th.
2 days, okay.
It's January 9th and 10th. And, it's a little something for them. They don't, why bring them in to sit and study most because they're not taking the test?
And after this year, then it will just be students that either are completing the course, which would be spring testing students, or someone who didn't pass it, was taking it previously that needs it to graduate.
So again, seniors next year could be in the same boat. Okay.
And a couple of years ago, I gave the board a presentation on Keystones and said there were plans for up to 17 different Keystone tests to be developed and implemented. At this point, there will only be 3. There's no funding to do any of the grand scheme plan of a couple of years ago at this point anyhow. Again, there's a number of different scores you get for No Child Left Behind. One of them is that 95% of every group that tests in your buildings have to take the test, and you will get a score if the group has 40 or more students, whether it's female, male, third grade at a particular building, a minority, special ed, ESL, any of those different subgroups. If you have less than 10 students, you will see there's certain gaps in my reports, and that is because you don't get a score for anybody less than 10, a subgroup of less than 10. Some of the reports that you see and that you've seen in other No Child Left Behind binders that I've done are dictated by No Child Left Behind's law, which is outdated and needs to be reauthorized, and there's still no plans to do that either. Attendance is another area which they look at, and finally the graduation rate, and you have to show growth and so on in those. And also our staff, which you saw in the No Child Left Behind binder, indicates how many of the staff are highly qualified, which means they have the proper cert for what they're teaching. And that has been a long-standing tradition at Daniel Boone, that we only hire people with this cert, so we've always been 100% highly qualified. If you look in the binder, right behind the index page, the second page of your binder, you have this little cheat sheet that the board asked me to put together, just so you're able to follow who is the class of a particular grade and where they are now. Well, right after the very front index, where you have the colored tab. So if you're looking to find out where is the class of 2000 and, let's say,
Kindergarten classes 2025.
You'll know where they are. Okay?
Wow.
So the first report you have is the Foresight report, followed by PSSA from last year, the SAT and the ACT, the AP scores, and then finally some of the action planning that was done this previous year. If you go to the first tab, the first one is the progress monitoring that we do through Foresight. The district made the decision last year in this committee, midway through first semester, not to continue the high school testing. And so the testing this year is based on 3rd through 8th grade. If you look at your report, the first report that you have, and it's a 8.5 by 14 sheet of paper, the tests were taken 3 times, September, January, and May. And what I have for you are the total number of students that took the test, the number of students that were below basic, proficient, and advanced, and each time also breaking out the number of special ed students, because that's an important population that we have to run interventions for, so we need to know and be able to follow their success.
And Mrs. Trainer, let's just, let's make a point where, yeah, we did, as a committee, recommend that because from the feedback from our high school staff members that were here, because of the fact that the test didn't change.
Right.
So by the time you took it the 3rd time, you already knew the questions. And as a 16-year-old or 17-year-old, it didn't take a lot to start figuring out what the questions were and knowing the answers. So they didn't feel, and the board agreed that it gave you any ammunition to be able to determine whether or not they were actually proficient in that exam. So
the September test data to an elementary principal is your baseline data. It would tell you it gives you an idea of who you should be targeting. It gives you the special ed population that is below the proficient level. And in Foresight, the goal isn't necessarily to become advanced, it's to become proficient or advanced. And so if you look on the left side of each one of those sections, total number of students tested, total number of students proficient, and the percent proficient, that's actually the combination of proficient and advanced students. That's the goal, because the test is designed that if the children are proficient in foresight, it should carry into the PSSA test.
I have a question real quick about AIC reading.
Yeah, I was going to ask that too.
Yeah, one went down proficiency from January to May, and the other went up 1 percentage point. Is there an explanation for that, or is that just the nature of?
Just
Nature of the
percentage
data.
point isn't.
Probably
Yeah.
it's statistically insignificant.
Well, because I'm looking at the others, and in math they go up substantially from January to May. I'm talking about the proficiency percentages. And in AIC reading, in 5th grade, they go from 76% to 83%, which isn't as large as the math growth. But in 3rd and 4th grade, it goes up 1% and actually goes down, I think, 3%.
I think it's due to them going from reading nonfiction to fictional reading, that becomes a trigger for the younger students, that now they have to begin to use a different skill set that they didn't have. And by 5th grade, they're pretty well adapted to that. Because that was a question that was asked by myself as I was reviewing with the staff. And that became the bigger problem, where their fluency would go down a bit.
Yeah, because MEC, if you look on the next page, MEC did the same thing.
Right.
Okay, yeah,
It has to do with the
Yeah.
addition of fiction, which is a little bit harder for them to understand and to read as fluently.
Okay.
The other reading had been a problem at the elementary for a number of years, and so last year we did an implementation of a brand new reading series that's tied to the Common Core, and have since put it in 6th grade and also put it in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. So our intention is that we'll now have a scripted program that students will be getting all of the components of language and writing that they need. And so we're expecting that over the next year or so we should be seeing a lot of growth in the reading. So if I was looking at AIC math, just for an example, in September 52% would be proficient, in 3rd grade 33%, in 4th grade, and 18% in 5th grade. And this is prior to any instruction. So it's not like they're not able to perform. This is our starting point. Okay. The second tab takes you to your PSSA test. And if you aren't aware of the sliding scale, each year, No Child Left Behind raised the bar as far as the percentage of children in any category that would score proficient. And the original law says that by the 13-14 school year, 100% of all of the students in any category should be reading and doing math at a grade level.
Is the state ready to put every single school district in the state on warning and then on improvement plans and taking them over and everything else?
There's some tricks coming down the road. But anyhow, in the short term,
Smoke and mirrors there.
Yeah.
talk about that. They significantly went up for this current year, and so for Boone to still be highly qualified, except for at the high school, and that was a special ed issue, speaks highly of the program that we've been running. This coming year, this year we're currently in, the bar is now going to be at 89% of the children in any category has to score proficient in math, and 91% in reading. I know Mr. Shaheen and I agree on many of the faults of PSSA,
I don't
but
bother looking
it's
at
not a
this.
normed test. Every year the population is compared to a different population. It doesn't show the growth of a child over 2 years. The test questions change. Oftentimes there's errors in the questions and some of the scoring. And in many cases, it is not content specialists that are scoring the open-ended tests. And so there's all types of convoluted issues that get to be part of this.
In other words, there are challenges to the true validity of the test,
Right.
spoken from a purely scientific standpoint.
Down, as you asked me a second ago, so what are they ready to do? Everything about the 3rd through the 5th grade test is going to change in content requirement next school year. And so the Department of Education has petitioned the federal government to allow us to lower the bar because it's apples and oranges again. They're going to be looking at this school year that you're required to teach this content, and next school year it's different content in some cases. And so how can you compare them and be expected to grow in scores? And so the federal government is entertaining the opportunity for us to, as a state, to be able to reduce the bar and then start back up again. The same is true at the high school. It's worse. Mr. Henkel last year took PSSA tests on certain content area, and it's going to be compared to Keystone Exams. And so they were also permitted to petition the federal government and asked to be, actually I believe PDE actually asked could they start over, which will raise an interesting question. So what happens to school improvement schools? Which is all part of how we could possibly see a lot of the issues around school districts not being able to get 100% college qualified postponed for a number of years. And so I was told that I won't hear the solutions offered by the federal government till April or May, but there are things in the works as far as we may see some changes before they have to take the 13, 15 tests. You have two sets of scores in the PSSA area. The one that I don't believe is the valuable one, but in No Child Left Behind it's required. Different populations over 2 years at the same grade. The one that is more beneficial, if you go back to the cream color set of documents, are the same students over 2 years. Different content grade level, but it shows you growth. And one of the things that principals look at is what kind of interventions did they do for those students, and were they successful? Are they losing ground? What could be more successful? And so this provides a lot of data for them to then be able to go in and use some of the online tools that the Department of Ed offers to find out who those students actually are. And so again, as a reminder, in all of the years we have had, and I can get them all on this particular chart, we've only had 2 different schools go into any type of warning. Birdsboro Elementary went in one time, and the special ed population at the high school was the other issue so far.
I'm going to ask this question because I never seem to get a straight, I won't say straight answer, I never seem to get an answer that satisfies me. And I know a number of the board have asked. We have all this data. Has anybody taken this data and said, okay, Johnny over here is not proficient, and then said, okay, Johnny's now 11th grade. He's not proficient. Who did he have for math in 10th grade, 9th grade, 8th grade, 7th grade, and then do the same thing with all the population and see if somewhere along the line there was a common denominator where they may have crossed paths with a particular teacher or a particular instructor, just to see if there's something that we could use there, because I have to believe that if we, not everybody, and this is not to insult it, but not everybody is able to get across to every child in the world, and maybe a particular teacher, maybe it was their first year, maybe it was their second year, and then they fine-tune their skills and not have a problem anymore. But to look at that data and try to find out, is there something, is there a common denominator? Do they cross somewhere on the axes where, and not to go out and beat somebody up, but to assist that instructor to get better?
Well, and I'll speak the big term, and then I'll let these folks on my right speak. There are, in the Foresight exams, we actually do printing of data by teacher, by class, and at the middle school. So you would be able to follow somebody. And I know that from all of the different reports I would give out each year, that was one of the different angles they would look at when they were trying to find out what worked, what didn't work, is it a certain person's group of students, and so on. over years, I know that at the middle school, there was a database built that at least it looked at a number of factors, and the instructor of record was in that mix.
Okay.
But it isn't long-term that they look at that. They actually look at it, and if, I'll use Mary Beth for example, if over 2 or 3 years, as she's starting to disaggregate her data, Mrs. X's classes always seem to be the one that's being flagged, and there's nothing different other than a mixed population, that comes out a lot quicker than waiting till the end.
I just think it'd be a powerful tool if we were able to, moving forward down the road, be able to look at that and then much earlier and do some corrective measures, intervention to help prevent a child from struggling when maybe it's the way they're being taught, and helping that teacher teach better.
Isn't that the
Those
point of
conversations
PVOS?
happened at a grade level.
Isn't that the point of PVOS?
Yes. But I mean, they've taken that data and then analyzed it.
See, Pennsylvania has this another system that they use to track individual students called PVOS. It's Pennsylvania Value Added Assessment System.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll let Tom speak to that. Tom, I know maybe you want to speak to that, Tom, about how you use the PVOS data.
Oh, I was blessed with having Rob for all those years, get him around Mr. Data.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this, in a general, there were numerous conversations that I had with certain teachers. Those scores were shared privately, and some questions were asked, and to work with them, and to not to put them over the coals, not to do anything, but for them to realize where their students stood as opposed to other individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And it certainly wasn't, if I had all the upper kids comparing to, but at the middle school, like math teachers, every math teacher had a low section, every math teacher had a couple grade level sections, every math teacher had an honor section. So it's quite easy.
Right. And again, I wasn't looking for it to be any type of stick and carrot. What I was looking for, we got all kinds of data here, and I wanted to make sure that we as a district are at least using our data to improve. And that's I have not gotten that answer in the past. But yes, somebody is using this data to correct our programs.
We utilize it a lot more.
We don't actually. That's more working data than it is data that you publish for the public. This is part of the report card.
I understand the report
card.
That
PVOS is a tool, though, that we've had for years.
But we've got this data, we've got grades data, we've got how many kids go from academic to honors. All this information out there, and I just wanted to make sure that we were utilizing all. And this is the third year I've asked this. This is the first year I've got somebody has used that data. Somebody has coached and counseled and mentored teachers to help improve their performance and our students' performance. So you answered the question. And
we also make, at the elementary level, we make decisions at the end of the year for future year assignments, where we believe somebody's strength would be better used, or the individual would be suited for a primary class instead of a middle level class that they were in. So we use it in a lot of different components. Throughout the reports for PSSA this year that we received back from the Department of Ed, these are the subgroups that were reported. All students, male and female, students with IEPs, economically disadvantaged, which is synonymous with the free and reduced lunch population, and those that are considered in the white subgroup. So the first report, as I mentioned before, compares the same grade, different students. And the second one are the same students over 2 years, and that's the one that we believe is a lot more useful. One thing I do want to bring up to pat the high school on the back is 2 years ago their math scores were in jeopardy, and so the math department worked real hard to try and make some changes in their curriculum that they felt would be advantageous to the students. And in the 11-12 testing, they ranked first in Berks County. out of 18 school districts, and they came out with 75.1% of the students proficient. And in reading, they came out 6th out of the 18 school districts.
Do we do anything to recognize the department for that achievement? Is that a big deal?
We will in 2 weeks.
Okay, good.
Are there any questions on the PSSA? Okay, if we move to the third, as my time is moving on here. For the SAT test and the AC test, you have a long-term report that I do each year. You will see that Boone scored at the state mean or higher. It shows you the number of students who graduated, the number that took the test, and then it gives you the means both at the local level, the state level, and the national level. And if you haven't seen the report before, on the far right, beginning with 2005, there was not a writing test that was recorded the same way, and so that's why those areas are blank.
Do you have any, in this, you may have heard or you may not hear, have you heard anything about them doing away with the writing test? Again, going through this now, kind of you applied last year, I'm going through one with the senior this year, where the colleges are saying, don't bother sending us the writing test, we don't want it. It's, you can have 3 different people score it and get 3 different numbers, so don't even bother with it.
I have heard the complaint, but I have not heard that they have made a decision to eliminate it.
Because I know that many colleges are telling you, we don't even look at the writing score anymore. It's the math and it's the reading. It's not the writing anymore.
You also have a copy of the annual ACT average. And you can see, again, I give you the national summary, the state summary, and the district summary scores. And Boone, again, is within or less than 1 point at or higher than the state and national averages in those scores also. If you go over to AP, Mr. Shaheen had asked me to run a number of different reports this year, and so you have an expanded section in the report. The very first one is just the Daniel Boone scores that I do each year. It has the number of students that took the test, the number of students that scored 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and students like to score at a 3 or higher, and then it shows you how many of those students. If you turn to the second page actually, I have an asterisk next to every percentage or mean number there that exceeds the state and national mean scores. And so you can see that in the art studio drawing, there were not a large number of population in that area. And the chemistry, Mr. Henkel and Mrs. Portia and myself have already started to work with Mrs. Miller, and I think we have some good solutions for being able to address some of those deficiencies. If you look at the third set of data on the cream color sheet, this is the long-term data, and it goes back as far as I could find scores, which was when I started doing this. You will see that there are different tests that start at different years, and that's because we introduced that particular AP course. And in one case, which I believe is the European history.
Yeah, that's the one where the student just decided, what the hell, let's take the test anyways.
Yes.
And he scores a 5.
So
Yeah, European history more or less.
representative of when we would start those tests. The fourth test shows you the AP scores, the number of students, the number of students that got a 3 or higher, and the percentage, and it does that for Daniel Boone, for Pennsylvania, and also for the United States. And then if you look at the next report, it's the 5-year mean score comparison between Daniel Boone, Pennsylvania, and global. So it presents the data in a number of different ways for you to look at. And the very last section is just a summary of what happened in the first few months of the school year, August, September, and October, where building principals took all of the data that you see in front of you and some other information that they had, and they were able to analyze their data, talk about some goals that they needed to work toward, and some program changes that they wanted to implement with the staff throughout the year. And the white pages that follow are a combination of a district-wide, some of the initiatives, and also then some of the areas in math and language arts that we went on to work on. Mr. Henkel, different than K-8, was required to do an action plan that was prescribed through the Department of Education. And so he was limited in some of the areas that he would work on, and I know he and his assistants worked on the plan due by December 1st.
Been submitted.
And so the 8th grade worked by department, and they had some different goal setting to do just because of the requirement of the Department of Ed. And that was any school in Pennsylvania that was part of the program. Any questions?
No, Miss, and I guess moving forward, are you going to do this upcoming? Is this going to be passed off to your designated hitter moving forward? The reason I'm saying is I was very much, I pushed for the AP data because I like seeing 5-year trends. We're all about trends. I like to see how we compare. That's the first time I've seen against PA and against state. To be able to sit there and say, with the exception of chemistry and AP Studio, drawing, our students performed higher at the state and at the national level than in the AP testing says a lot. And this is the first time we've actually been able to see that data to be able to say that. And in some cases significantly higher than the state and national averages. So, now that you have it, I guess you just need to keep adding it to it and be able to do the math. But that tells you, because a lot of times you look at the data and everybody's saying, well, where's our SAT scores going? Well, our SAT scores aren't going up. They're not going down either.
Nor is anybody else.
Yeah, nor is anybody else's. And I think part of the problem we have is that it's just not a Boone situation. Many schools, if not all schools, try to get as many students into taking that SAT, even if they're not going to go to college, and they're bringing down score averages and flatlining them. And I think some of the students are getting very frustrated with having to take a test that means absolutely nothing for them moving forward if they're going to go into the workforce or they're going to go into the military or something along that line. They're being forced, and the scores are showing. But as long as our scores are flatlined, some people see a 2-point drop and our scores are dropping. 2 points out of 500 doesn't drop. If we went from 500 to 410, then I'd be all concerned and we'd looking for an improvement program. But for as long as you got data there, it seems to be a very, very flatline number. Now, again, I don't know if you can separate that data even further with those that go on to higher education and those that don't. You may not get data in that format to be able to do that, but I think that would be very telling also.
I believe long-term, PDE would like to do that in the future. But some of this I got when I made the second call to Princeton to get some of the further. They don't usually give some of that data. Not that it's secret. They just give global kind of information out to the school. But we're certainly willing to give this information. But that was as far as they had it statistically collected that I put together for the issue.
Okay.
So.
I have a few questions. A lot of them are more kind of big picture questions, but I do think they affect Daniel Boone. Of course they do affect Daniel Boone. But you mentioned that No Child Left Behind is going to expire shortly if it's not
It had
reauthorized.
expired.
It did.
So it stays in place if they haven't done anything to correct it or change it.
Okay, and is that forever it'll stay in place unless they correct it or change it?
Once you reach 100%, we need to stay at 100%
Okay.
forever.
All right, so that answers that question.
No Child Left Behind is a federal law. Federal laws don't go away. They just get reauthorized.
And even if it's not reauthorized, a lot of times they stick around anyway.
Well, they would have to abolish it. And they either have to reauthorize it or abolish it.
I would say that you might see something next year. They don't have any need to do it this year. But when the crunch time comes, that's usually when you see them finally do something about it.
Like the fiscal cliff.
Financial issue right now.
Right.
All right, and then one other thing. I know we're switching over to the Keystone Exams now, and I'm just curious because oftentimes we hear that we're spending more time on testing than we are, not more time, we're spending a lot of time on testing and that we shouldn't be spending on teaching. Are we spending more time on the Keystones compared to the PSSAs? They take up less time. Well, that's good.
Yes.
At least that's a silver lining.
Yes.
The
Okay.
more proficient they get, the less amount of time we spend. So we have to make it worthwhile to the students to want to score proficient as quickly as possible.
And I think that's great.
Well-
That motivation is a big part of it.
I think the fact that, and again, I'm going back in time, and again, we've all talked, in New York State, we had the Regents exams that we had to pass as students in every subject.
Yeah, they were high stakes.
Or you didn't graduate,
We weren't a Regents grad.
or you weren't a Regents, you had two diplomas. You had a school diploma or you had a Regents diploma. And the Regents diploma meant you went to college. If you didn't get a Regents diploma, you didn't go to college. You couldn't go to college because you had less credits. But I think requiring students to pass these three exams is that carrot that will help them. They're not just going to circle A, B. I haven't got a C in a while. Let's circle a C on these tests. So it'll work out.
And there is, again, conversation in Harrisburg to allow districts to use it as the final exam, and of course.
And that's the way the Regents were. They were your final exam.
And then only those, you get a number of times to be able to retake it, and then there's Plan B. And they don't really have Plan B ironed out yet, but they know they have a couple months.
Now, Harrisburg, I did see in one of our little things we got that if they use it as the final exam, regardless of whether or not you passed the course, if you passed the Keystone, you're given course credit.
One of the issues that a lot of schools have already raised is when they don't take it till the end of May, how will we have the scores before the first week of June? When it takes you forever to do some scoring. And so there's
New York
just
did
lots of
2
extra
weeks when it was back handwritten. It can be done. It's all computered.
I have a question. I was looking through these action plans, and I saw the middle school's PSSA challenge. Can you explain that a little bit? I'm sure it's a motivator tool. Can you explain what that is?
PSSA challenge, 7th grade language arts would always have a challenge within the different teams. Huge, like a chart on the walls down in the 7th grade wings. And they would team against team based on foresights and different activities that they did and all that other stuff. It's a challenge among teams.
I know
It's like an athletic challenge, but academic.
I think that's a great idea, and I know middle school students are different animals than high school students.
Right.
But if there's anything, maybe not exactly the PSSA challenge that we do at the high school, but something similar that maybe could give those kids who really who don't care about the Keystones, maybe that could just give them another incentive to care.
I've talked to some principal friends of mine in Chester County, high school principal friends of mine, that they have ideas that have worked. They saw an immediate 7 to 10% jump in proficient scores just in this one incentive plan that God is not putting else here because I haven't talked to anybody about it, but it's working in Westchester, Downingtown, and a few of the other schools. They've seen an immediate 7 to 10% jump in proficient scores.
Well, if we can
They
do
said
that,
the parking pass. Everybody said the parking pass thing really. Half the kids park illegally anyway.
Yeah.
They do.
I mean, it was something that was put in, but you're right. I mean, it needs to be higher stakes than that. Okay.
well, it sounds great if we can get that done.
Stay tuned.
We have any questions from? Okay.
In the high school, are there early dismissals because of sports in the springtime from their last period class?
Generally not. Because Because most, you have most of your athletic events where it might end.
Okay, I'm talking about from the spring. I'm
Spring
thinking
baseball.
mostly baseball.
See, Berks County, their athletics start later than Chester County.
Okay.
I was always used to a 3:30, 3:45 start. Here you're looking at a 4:15 start. So you do have those occasions if you're traveling
Okay.
to the far end of the county.
Because when I taught in Phoenixville, I know I had algebra, I taught 1 year, 7th period, whatever you taught. And I can remember when you had these rain delays and when they backed up, students missing the whole period, 3 out of the 5 days.
Yeah, I don't think it happens that much out here in Berks County.
Hey, Marie.
Terry and Meg can.
Not as much as,
You could just slide up.
like you said, it doesn't happen like you said, missing every day. Occasionally,
Yeah.
like you said, when they have farm meets.
But Chester County's athletics do start early,
Okay.
particularly with the Pac-10. They start earlier than Berks County.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Emery. The other topic is the course selection guide. Last year, it was a 3 or 4 visit thing. I'm hoping we can do what we need to do here. One of the things I did is I did challenge Mr. Henkel on a couple of topics on this, and one of it was, and again, I'll let you. Not going to steal your thunder on it, but
there's no thunder really.
no thunder. I wanted him to look at the guide and give it a fresh cut. There were a number of things that we as a board have wanted to do for a number of years, and that was try to challenge our student body into either honors or AP classes where it made sense and where they had the potential ability to stretch themselves. A child in academic course that was scoring a 96, that was putting no effort into it. If you put him into, or even let's just say an 83 with no effort into it, pushing him into an honors course where maybe getting the effort to pull a 83, stretch that individual a little bit, and same thing with AP. To try to open up some more sections, and Mr. Henkel and I have talked about this in the past. We also looked at the science requirements because of the fact that we require 3 science credits to graduate in our strategic plan. But as it was written previously, the only class you could take as a freshman was biology, the only class you could take as a sophomore was chemistry, and the only class you could take as a junior was physics. And oh, by the way, there were the only 3 classes that counted as science credits. Everything else was an elective, and you had no choice. This year we have approximately 50% of our juniors taking applied physics because they did not qualify for the academic mainstream physics class, which is just wrong. So hopefully what you see here with some of the changes that have been made will help it. Again, having gone through the process this year, very few colleges out there require physics as a prerequisite unless you're going into a physics major or a chemistry major or some type of a science major. Otherwise, physics is not a requirement. 3 science courses, biology, chemistry seems to be it. So that being said, I'll turn the table over to Mr. Henkel. If we've all looked at this, if you just want to highlight some of the things you've done, and then if we have any questions. By the way, this is the last year we'll offer. Is this the last year for 5th year Spanish and German? Okay.
Next one coming through with, because 8th grade last year did not have a foreign language.
Right.
So
we got 9th, 10th. Oh, so we got a few more
I
years.
observed, today I observed Mrs. Arroyo's sophomore Spanish 3 class. So technically,
Okay. Right, and beyond. So you've got 2 more years of a 5.
right.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I don't know what to say, but I've had the been very fortunate to be in 2 other school districts in my career and to be able to look at those areas and tap the resources. But one thing that stands out, and if you're looking at any excellent high school, the excellent high schools, according to the state, according to the country, are those high schools in which the most children, students, are exposed to the most rigorous of curriculum. That's fact. So what we're trying to do, and talking to the department chairs, we're trying to start to move more students up to honors, out of conceptual or applied, into academic. And we're trying it at a 15 to 20% rate for next year. And what would that mean? We can get an extra 20 kids out of conceptual to applied. An extra 20 kids. That's a start. That's where we want to go. I have been very flexible this year with students attempting honor sections, even if they, quote, did not make the requirement. Because talking to a lot of my colleagues in other districts, they just said, if a student has a B, they can go. So that's where we are. We have to remember, too, a B in Boone is hard to accomplish to the B in, say, another school. And that's where we're looking at, because a B in some school could be 80 to 89.
Right. And if it was up to our colleague in the back there, he'd have us increase the A even further, so.
What was Phoenixville?
Excuse me?
What was Phoenixville for big? 80, 89?
If I remember correctly, it was 86, something like that.
Okay. So what we did, number one, we took a look at the science end. And science credit is going to be given for everything but forensics. That will still continue to be an elective. Anything else is either science credit or elective credit.
And either one, right.
So if you're taking a senior class and you're taking, or a junior taking anatomy and physiology, you need the science credit, counts as science credit. You need the elective credit, satisfy the science, you get the elective credit. That's the way it has to be. So we started there. Kelly Jones and the Social Studies Department, I thought, came up with a great idea. They had concerns over those students who were academic and doing very, very well, like Mr. Sheen said, but maybe in the honor sections they would not be as successful. So I said, well, Kelly, about how many students are we talking? She goes, we could have probably 50 students who are the tweeners. So they have created accelerated classes in social studies.
Which falls between the academic and the honors. Okay.
It doesn't increase staffing, doesn't do anything like that, just reapportions who teaches what. And you see it in the social studies department. They have accelerated humanities, accelerated US 1, accelerated, and we're looking at probably 2 sections there.
Now, on that question there, I'm going back to page 9 here, as far as GPA and class rankings. You wanted to make that a .05?
We want to come up with, to give in that section, some kind of credit.
I would be amenable to go .025, give it half of what you would get for an honors.
Yes.
Because if you weigh it as heavily as an honors course, then
No motivation.
then there's no motivation to take an honors
No,
course.
then that was a mistake. We wanted to split honors in half.
Okay, so it would go 1.025
Yeah,
then.
1.025.
Okay.
And that would be not just for the social studies courses?
Any
but
place
Right
else
now,
there's
we're just doing the accelerated.
Yeah.
In that we're trying this.
So that'll become the model.
We're just trying it.
But I'm trying to figure out, is that 1.025 just for social studies, or is it also for accelerated math?
There isn't an accelerated math. There's,
Oh, that changed?
they're trying it in just social studies.
We're just doing it this year that way. We've talked with.
So the only
We
place
have
you would
to
have that
kind
.25 would be for that one course.
Yeah, we have.
Okay.
We have to kind of streamline some things because English, talking to Mr. Palmer, they have some theory. They have like accelerators.
We have honors, academic, and applied right now.
Yeah, they have. Some have 4 sections. Social studies just basically bang and bang.
Okay, yeah, I know. It's just because I was in math, 9th grade, it was accelerated trigonometry.
There is accelerated
Right, so I'm
trigonometry.
not doing it there because
Okay.
Because we're looking at the social studies as a, quote, above grade level kind of moving thing.
Okay, and
We're only
honors.
just trying it there with the extra weight. just
Okay.
For next year.
Okay.
And then we'll adjust.
Students will be aware of that when they do their.
Well, we need to make sure we have that corrected in here then.
Yeah, we will.
I just want to understand then, just for the sake of the math, is accelerated trigonometry, is that not above grade level? Is that why it's weighted at 1? And honors is above grade level? Okay. So that's, now I know how that's determined. Okay.
We wanted to do something. It came from Kelly, and they had it came from the social studies department. That's what
Again, as long as the curriculum is between the two.
yeah, it's going to be more writing actually.
Good.
This is the way they.
That's the bump. Justification.
So we're
for the
looking
bump.
at that. We're basically just making some, as I said, the adjustments in the math department where Megan's involved in it out there, and Nancy changed some names conceptual, but also they've adjusted some of the prerequisite requirements to allow these movements to occur.
It was like pulling teeth last year.
Yeah, well, I cannot speak about that.
Go ahead, laugh.
There's been administrative reorganization.
Okay.
We
One more
also,
comment.
in science, added the honors Chem 2,
Okay, which will help us.
the AP.
Right. Okay. So you're to take so a prerequisite to the AP would be the honors Chem 2 then.
Yes, it's if you want. Ms. Miller has stated that the discrepancy is like those kids are in it. Some of them just aren't moving, and there's like literally a great divide between the uppers and there. So the AP, the honors Chem 2, will help with that situation for maybe those kids.
Okay.
And we're working through that. We made some adjustments in the art based on the new Mr. Jacobs
Mm-hmm.
to get to their strengths. He's really a techno whiz. So we really adjusted that. But other than that, I mean, a lot depends on also the budget. In the phys ed, depending on the final budget, traffic safety would be removed. If that comes through, that would be a removed course. Okay. I'm looking forward to it. I'm curious as to see how it's going to work out when we going to present this to the kids, to the parents, and things like that, and get the course selection started.
Well, I think it's
a start.
It's a start, and I mean you've done some things here that we asked you to. I mean you've done without adding headcount, which is huge, and to be able to. Any course, I mean, again, it helps with our electives. I mean, that's a big deal. To be able to take courses that aren't necessarily labeled as electives and have them count as elective because you already satisfied the other requirement. So
It's about what's doing best, and I want to thank all the department chairs. There was never any pushback, really. I mean, there really wasn't. The department chairs, you know, they came up with the ideas. They understood. I mean, I sat them down with the numbers. I mean, it was real easy. Explain to me how we have as many kids in the low sections as all the other sections combined. I mean, it just doesn't make much sense to me.
and unfortunately, I think you're going to see a number of students taking physics drop next year.
We're in a business. I explained to the physics department that when we do course selection, and not just the physics department, you market your product.
Right.
Go in. I asked them.
Go in the chemistry class and market it.
Have you ever had the opportunity to show the underclassmen what your class is about? Well, no. Well, this year you will. Go in and market your product.
Yeah, let them know that if you plan on going to college to do this, 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 and this, it's a requirement. I mean, to be honest, we heard, it came out, I mean, those were around when we decided to drop the language in middle school. All we heard is that we're doing our students wrong. We're doing them wrong. Colleges, and again, going through this process, talk to admissions people, 2 years mandatory, a third's a nice. Beyond the third year, it doesn't matter. It's just another course they've taken. So the fact that you're not taking Spanish 5 or German 5 didn't help you or hurt you to get into a college. And the admissions people are telling you that straight out. So, let them get in and
because one of the things to the foreign language thing, since that's an area of expertise of mine, there's so many opportunities to take further electives in college.
Right.
For advanced foreign languages
Right.
too. So it doesn't have to all happen at the high school level.
Right.
And I just have to be aware I'm going to assume that like Earth and Space, those numbers will increase.
Right.
I'm going to assume that.
I have a few things I'd like to talk about. I went through this twice and looked at it. This is one of my favorite things to receive as a school board member because I've had to deal with it so much as a student. It's nice to be able to look at it, and so I like this process. And I have a few things I'd like to discuss. First, I'd like to thank you for what you said earlier about how the most excellent schools really become excellent by having students take higher level courses. And to me, that was refreshing to hear because how I look at it, it's great to have these AP scores, and I really like that we have them. And I think that it would be great to have more kids take those courses. And if that means the scores may come down a little bit, to me that's all right. But I hear oftentimes...
No, actually probably go up.
And that would be great too, and even better. I hear oftentimes from some staff members and some students, my younger brother included, he wouldn't mind that I mentioned that when you increase the number of students in these classes, you risk dumbing down the course.
Actually, you're raising the bar as opposed to lowering the bar.
Yeah, that's how I look at it.
You actually are.
And something that these people say is that the course will have to be taught at a slower rate to accommodate the questions of these students. And to me, how I look at it, we should be encouraging kids to take these classes and to push them because that's how they learn as well. So I'm very glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that that's kind of a change in thinking, at least, at that building and from other people. So I'm very happy to hear that. That's number one.
I mean, Connor, and some of the teachers in high school probably disagree with me. That's okay. But we're not changing curriculum.
Yeah.
No.
We're not.
And we're not going to slow the teaching process down. The goal is to take those that are here and raise their abilities to here, not take these people and bring them down.
Exactly.
And as a point is, I did receive a letter. It was unsigned, undated from a resident, very upset that we were doing this, pointing out exactly what you said. We're going to be dumbing down and slowing down the advancement of our brighter students. And again, because you don't sign it and give a phone number or something that I couldn't get back to, but I'm with Mr. Kurtz and you, and you know that because you and I have talked about this ad nauseum, that I want to push, I want to stretch as many people as we can because if you don't stretch somebody, you don't know where the breaking point is, and they never live up to that potential. And that's what we're here to do.
And that's what good schools do.
Why are all the others? I'll take math for example. Okay, then why are school districts in the immediate area take 8th grade? In Daniel Boone, Algebra 1 is an honors class. Free algebra is the grade level class. In surrounding school districts, you take Algebra 1 in 8th grade. That is the class you take.
Right.
So you're telling me those school districts are dumbing down their math curriculum? I don't think so. That's just not the way it is.
No. And I think that we, and as a math department in a whole, I think we stretch, our math department tends to stretch our students.
Oh, I think that
A lot, at least at the high school, they tend, and it shows up in our test scores because we were number one in the county. I mean, it shows that they're pushing their students and are putting that effort into pushing and not dumbing it down. So I'm hoping that as we go on, with what we got here, that we're going to see social studies first, and then some of the others. So.
Yeah, that was my first thing. I have a little lister, not too many.
In fact, you had to write it down. It scares me.
I typed it up. I wrote it down. I did everything.
I knew I shouldn't have given it to you.
I wanted to know, we're talking about the science courses and how now Earth and Space Science and Anatomy and Physiology will count as science courses and or electives.
Right.
You mentioned that forensics would not, and I never have taken forensics, so I don't really know exactly, but why won't that count?
We just felt that right now we're going to leave at least one in there. That's all.
Okay.
No rhyme, no reason. I checked, I had like 9 other, if you go into my office, I have 9 other course catalogs. from different surrounding school districts. And they do, in the science areas, they do have a couple, one or two, that are strictly elective classes. So I felt, we're going to just leave it as that.
Are we still mandating biology and chemistry, correct? Okay. So after your sophomore year, your junior, senior year, you can take.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. I had an idea when we were going through the whatever this is, the PSSA score report, and we were going through the AP section, and it was mentioned how a student took European history one year, and we don't offer European history. So I'm guessing he took that at another school district.
No, he just decided he wanted to take the test.
How do you to do that though? Don't you have to take the test with a district somehow? Like I can't just go to the AP people and say, give me the test, I want to take it, and have it count.
I'm sure, I don't know how exactly how it worked, but I'm sure they went through guidance took care of it, contacted the company, and then the test came.
Well, I get homeschooled students can take AP tests. They just have to.
Well, my point is, can we get that into the course selection guide somehow to let kids know that even if we don't offer, say, AP Government, if you want to take the test, there's a way to do it. Just talk to guidance. Just to make it more accessible to those students.
I think we could look at that, but there's also, it's a double-edged sword the other way. That, our colleges going to allow you to get college credit for taking a test that you didn't take the coursework for?
I think generally they do let you, but again, that would be up between the student and the college.
Yeah. I don't think that's
and that's really not even any of our concern. But I mean, if we could make it easier, like I feel I would have taken more AP tests if I knew how to do it, if I knew the process. And if we can just make that more accessible, I think
that's up to the board. I do for that.
Well, I don't think we can put it in for this year, but maybe you can look at it for future versions. Because you got to proctor it. You have,
and I'm not saying
there is money involved.
There's money involved for that, and not just the money it takes to test. There's also money that we need to put out for that process.
Because, as I said, I do a lot of looking, and the number of AP exams that we offer are middle of the road. There are some school districts who offer 5, 6, 7 other AP sections, but we have to start somewhere.
Yeah. Okay, we can look into it in the future. If it's a money issue, I'm sure it's pretty much a non-starter. But
I don't think it's that much money, but I don't care if it's $1.
Yeah,
right.
We'll talk about it later. Just maybe keep that in mind for next year. Just think about it. Then I was going through this and I was looking at the art section, and this has always kind of been in the back of my mind. I never really brought it up, but I was wondering. Let me just flip to it real quick. We have a lot of art courses I see that we offer. However, if you want to be in the vast majority of them, you need to take either Art 1 or Color and Design.
Right.
And, I'm looking at, there are pages and pages of art classes, but they all require you to take at least Art 1 or Color and Design. Mm-hmm. Let's say a student,
I'm not an artist, Connor.
Neither am I. But let's just say a student wanted to take the photography course, because I know that's a popular one. And effectively, they're now taking, let's say they only wanted to take photography. They really didn't care much about sculpture or painting, or just glancing over what Art 1 covers. Now that means if they want to take that one course, they have to take 2 years of art courses just to take the one they want. And I know in math, you need to take previous courses because it builds upon what you learn. And like I said, I'm not too familiar with the art department. I'm sure there's some building involved. But I was just wondering in the future, maybe we could look at ways to open some of these classes up to students and maybe cut down on those prerequisites.
Oh yeah, I have no problem. As I said, to take a look at get this one done for this year.
Well, you actually do have it because you got better. You do have a recommendation. The issue is, and again, it has to probably do with the number of sections that would open up and whether or not you would have to additional staff and those kind of things also. So we got to be real careful budget-wise, because if you go and you're teaching one, and we have that data because I've got that sheet, that information for that. If we're teaching one section now and we go 4 sections, then that teacher was teaching something else that they no longer could teach. So who's going to teach it now? And it's still needed. So
yeah, it's kind of like a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it's
we want to get kids taking classes, but we can't have them.
I can understand why you want the 2 because they build on the color and design, but at the same time,
I would have to reflect back to my previous school district, which was Antietam, which had a very strong art department, and I know that those were prerequisites before they could get into a photography class as well.
Okay.
And the photography class everybody wanted to take, and in order to be able to, I don't want to say minimize the number of students, but to get the students who really aren't minded or serious about where they want to go with that course, they were just taking it because it was an opportunity to walk around the building, get cameras, take shots.
Think of it, you're also moving, now you're talking about a junior
Right.
taking that course
Right.
versus
To
a freshman taking that course.
That was the other reason why, because it became,
Yeah.
that
You'll be much
level.
more successful as a junior
Right.
than you would as a freshman.
Okay.
As a rule.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a standout.
Exceptions,
Right.
definitely, yeah. I'm now realizing more about our art curriculum is much more of a curriculum more than just a series of
Correct.
classes. So if you start up in art and you want to get to
Somewhere
art
else.
5, those are what the courses are
Right.
for. Okay, that makes more sense to me now, so I'm glad we discussed that. One more thing, I was looking through a new thing that we added. Actually, two things. In course criteria, it says that the prerequisites
Where?
include page 2. Under course criteria, it's in that paragraph, a few lines in. The prerequisites include the prior course that must be taken and the grade that must be acquired in percent in the preceding course. Students that do not meet the prerequisites will not be admitted to the course. There will be no waivers. However, students who are within 2 percentage points of an academic course prerequisite may contact the teacher and request recommendation to move into that course. Is this across the board now for all courses?
We put that in last
But
year.
that wasn't across the board. I know the math department.
Well, it
is
was across the board last year.
Oh, okay.
Because we made them put that in for people.
Because I thought that was just put in for sections, because I remember looking at certain sections and they had the requirements. I think it's still in here for the English department. It explains what you need to
Bless
do.
you. Actually, you made the mistake about putting it in last year here, and it copied for everything.
Okay.
But that is it. And there are exceptions, as you said, but
I did when I was at the middle school for reviews. And you have requirements. And you have parent influence. Just did an informal kind of collection. So it's been about 5 years. Kids who were moved up in sections based on parental request were in excess of 80% success in those sections. So for us to hold steadfast to a number is ludicrous. I have to be able to look myself in the mirror, because the idea is to say that student was given a shot. But then there's the other thing. If a student is in an honors section and is not doing well, they're not going to die in that section. That's also going to be the case.
don't wait till December to pull them out, though, either.
I think we had that
Correct.
discussion last year.
But-
Yeah.
But if they,
Yeah, that was a big stumbling point.
That was a stumbling point last year, and you lost that one,
you
too.
can,
Yeah, we-
you can destroy a student's GPA.
You can destroy a student, period.
Right.
Forget the
I'm not,
GPA.
as I said, I'm not, but just my philosophy, give them a shot.
Yeah.
That's all.
But don't you weigh that out with the parent and,
Absolutely, we
and,
talk it
and the
out.
teacher?
We don't have to say
Or
that.
teachers.
But we talk it out, and I mean, the decision made with me, and that the parent understands that, okay, but if they're struggling, let's take a good, clear look at they're struggling
Before.
and adjust it down.
Now, as far as ninth grade orientation, do you have any department heads come into the eighth grade, the middle school, to talk to?
Scott, I haven't even thought about that seriously. I don't know what they've done in the past.
I mean, obviously, we want to try to boost some kids in the honors, but obviously, with that,
We do that from 6th grade to 5th grade, so I would imagine that would be.
I mean, personally, the department heads and things, that would be it's generally been the guidance department who does it.
I mean, there's not a lot of choices for ninth grade, except whether you're going to be in academic or honors. And I think that we're going to have to rely on the guidance department to help do some of that.
I mean, I know
Yeah,
we
freshman
have-
and sophomore years are more prescriptive. It's when they get into junior and senior that they get more
I
chance
mean, I'm
for
hearing that
selection.
from my son's teachers going into ninth grade about moving to honors, and how's that working with other students? Are they mentioning that too? Is it just a brief overlay of?
What, for the present 8th grade?
Yeah.
We want to have that, when that meeting's there, as I said, I don't know what was done in the past, but it was run by the counseling department. That's going to be basically run by me.
But I know at the high school counseling was always with my older son, that was sort of like under the door, sort of slipped by. We talked to the counselor sort of after the fact.
I haven't seen that issue at all. I really
I
haven't.
think this was a couple years ago, so.
So, I mean, I've just seen a lot of counselors really positive and really working hard with the kids and getting them placed in sections that kids need to be placed in. So the education for the parents will come through me and the counselor.
Just so there's not everyone's going to run for honors. Obviously, you're going to discuss that. So.
On page 8, under scheduling of classes, there's a new section that was added. Each year, we dedicate time for review of student choices, eliminating the need for selecting changes later. Students are encouraged to make changes to their schedules during the summer before school starts. There will be a brief drop-add period during the first 3 cycles of the school year. Only students inappropriately placed may be moved to a higher or lower level after this time. Please make your choices. Okay. Now, I believe this is pretty clear, but when I was thinking about it a little bit more, I could understand there could be a little ambiguity, I guess, start to develop. Only students inappropriately placed. Is that what you were alluding to earlier? Like, let's say you were in honors and you were doing pretty poorly and you wanted to move down to academic. You could do that whenever, really.
I think you have to give some type.
May.
Yeah,
Right.
I know.
I mean,
you have the discretion.
Yeah, I think you have to put a line in the sand the first 3 cycles, and then the inappropriate placement would be
I agree with that.
the
I'm just trying
exceptions
to
rather than
determine the first 3 cycles is pretty much for any course whatsoever. And then the rest is just if you're moving between levels within a specific course.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I had that understood clearly. And then on the last page, 47, second to last, 47, we have the graduation project. Graduation project.
There is no graduation project.
Yeah, it says, beginning with the class of 2012, the career education course will supplement the former graduation project. I guess that could be cut out now just because the class of 2012 is out of there.
Okay.
I'm sure we're missed, but I guess we can strike that from the
It all depends if the graduation requirements in here have the graduation project.
Oh, and then I keep looking through the same things. Under Computer Science 1, I noticed that was in red. Is that just because it was completely rewritten, the description? Or
What page you on?
I'm on page 22. Look, I noticed there were some courses, I know Honors Chemistry 2 was in red because that was added, but I didn't really notice any difference between Computer Science 1 and how I thought it appeared last year. I didn't go back and check word for word, but I noticed it was in red. I was just wondering if there were any changes to that.
Not really.
Okay.
They just felt they made a change in word, a couple of things in there, but nothing big.
Okay, I just wanted to, again, make sure.
And
I care about
once
this.
again, though, for that area, we're not quite sure, depending on the budget, that is a department that has been discussed.
Let's back on page 12. We're going to need to take the graduation project out of there as well. Now, you said that based upon the budget, whether or not we would be able to, we would remove the driver's education. Is that what it's termed, driver's education? The reason I'm asking, and it's not a trick question, I'm asking because it is a graduation requirement that we can't change. Take that as a note because it's part of our strategic plan, and we can't petition a change in the strategic plan.
I'd have to check on that.
No, we asked that last year. We asked several years that
That
strategic.
traffic safety class?
Yeah, is that considered driver's education?
I guess, depending,
I mean, the reason I'm saying is it is a quarter credit that is part of, on page 12, that's part of our strategic plan for graduation requirements. And until we change our strategic plan, and as such, we can't eliminate that course until we do a new strategic plan and don't have it in there.
We were having that debate back and forth. And I was telling him no, and he was saying, yeah, I think.
So actually, we're both right because it's not a requirement by the state. That was the thing.
But it is a requirement in our strategic plan, which means we need to maintain it.
Goodness knows why.
Is there a way we could kind of incorporate driver's education to another type? Like, I know the gym teachers typically teach driver's education. Is there a way we could tie it in and kind of meet the strategic plan?
Was the
But
video review done with the strategic plan?
Yes.
It was just.
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah. So,
Very, very
again, I noticed,
very little
and I
fanfare.
just happened to catch that when we were talking about it, so. I know the new strategic plan's coming up shortly,
2014,
14,
I think.
15, yeah. That's yours.
Yeah.
So,
Welcome to the club.
okay. Any other questions? Questions?
Yeah, the diversity committee that you have hasn't been a full year yet, right? And over two.
Actually,
years.
the diversity committee is no longer meeting as a district committee, it's meeting as building committees moving forward.
It'll come back, but
Yeah.
it's not, yes, it's moving forward. I don't know what the question
I
is.
guess my question is, from that committee, has anything, I have 5 things here that could come out of a diversity committee. 1 would be an elective. 2 would be to amend a course content. 3, I have monthly celebration. 4 would be a date celebration. Or 5, assembly and activity. Is any of that incorporated into the new handbook?
We had asked the individual, let me just ask you to go another, and I'm not sure if you attended that meeting, but we asked the individual department heads to come in from the English department and the social studies department and talk about what they do as far as diversity is concerned. And they addressed that very well at that point, that in English and social studies, they both have units that they talk about, and so it was addressed. Maybe moving forward, a little clearer possibly, but there were units in both those, as far as the books that are required to be read in English, all the way through, and as well, Mr. Palmer addressed that, and Mrs. Jones addressed the social studies aspect of it.
I'm not that familiar with your program of studies. Does your program of studies list what topics are covered under a course?
In summary fashion. It's not a syllabus.
But correct me if I'm wrong. Again, what is taught at Daniel Boone in 11th grade social studies is the same thing taught at Topahakan 11th grade social studies. Same thing is taught in Reading in 11th grade social studies.
Oh, there's a common core.
There's a common core. Now, what they've done, and as far as the books that are being read, I remember my daughter in 8th grade social, 6th grade social, 7th grade social studies was reading a book, and I said I couldn't understand why she was reading that book, or actually many of those books. And now, in retrospect, I do understand that it was more the diversity of a girl in South Africa.
And geography class
Yeah.
at that time.
Yeah, but they read books. So, yeah, we do have that inbred in our core, and it was addressed by the 2 major departments. Obviously, you can't really teach diversity in math, or you have learning opportunities, as you call them, time to teaching opportunities. But as far as that's concerned, but biology is the same way. But the other 2 courses, we actually do have it ingrained, and we could probably down the road get a list of the books that are read as requirements, Huck Finn being one of them, I remember, and a number of others, as well as the movies and how it's done in the social studies.
Every course that we offer has a brief course description, and very much the same way a college catalog does.
I guess what I'm saying is this, from a year ago, from like more than that, 16 months ago, has any of that changed because of the diversity committee being formed and the problems you had with it? That's what I'm asking.
I don't think, to be honest with you, I don't really think the course description book is the place to even deal with that. I think that's being dealt with programmatically. Course description book is really just the description of the things that we're teaching, as far as the approaches and the emphasis on diversity. I think we're looking even beyond the curriculum to, incorporate things that, celebrate diversity and differences. I think one of the things that we found out from the presentation that they made was that in fact wasn't a deficiency in our academic program, that there wasn't a lack of coverage of diversity within our curriculum.
They were being exposed to it without knowing they were being exposed to it.
Mr. Schaff, I know you asked what the the listing of our programs looks like if we do include it in list form. I'd be happy to show you kind of what we do if you'd like to stay afterwards.
Well, that's actually on the website.
Yeah, it's on the website
Yeah.
too. I can show you.
Yeah, that's a public document.
Yeah.
I guess my question is more, has something been added?
No,
changed?
we investigated it.
Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, we understand. We investigated as per the diversity committee's request 3 meetings ago. We had a presentation, and it was agreed by the members of the committee and members that were there, public. The press was there, that we had what we needed in our course selections to address diversity where it needed to be addressed. But they were also challenged to continue to develop those programs to insert diversity studies where they felt it needed to be further advanced.
I mean, 25 years ago, something like this was electives were added to deal with situations like this, correct?
Yes, but I don't, again, I'm not going to say, because then I get, then I understand, but I'm not sure adding an elective.
I know, you're not in the financial.
Well, even if we were, I'm not sure adding an elective to strictly address diversity, all you're doing is you're drawing more attention to that elective versus taking our core courses we got now, which we felt had the direction they needed to be needed in them, and making sure it stays that way and enhance them moving forward. We talked about the movie, I can't remember, it's a Civil War movie with Glory, and we asked them very specifically how that is handled, and they talked about how that was handled. A few of the kids thought it was just thrown up there and no talking, but it was talked about prior to the movie. They were talked about after the movie, and it was explained to them. And we asked them possibly to give. We talked about possibly having them show the movie Red Tail, or the Tuskegee Airmen, or something along those lines. A little more modern representation of it. And they were going to look at that. So they're looking to update some of that program. I don't think you're going to see drastic changes in the curriculum because, again, I restated, everybody at the meeting thought that there was more than enough in the program. Maybe a little more sensitivity to the fact that when it's presented, not just to make the students aware that when it's presented that these are diversity issues at that point versus just showing glory and not going into depth as to why it was important to show that movie.
And I think that's something that should be done with all movies, really. We show there should be an educational component, and we should discuss them.
Right.
So I think that should be an across-the-board topic. Just if we show a movie, discuss why it's relevant today, what we learned from the movie, and if we're doing that, I think we can avoid some issues.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, we're done. Oh, wait. Next meeting will be the first Wednesday.
And that would be February 6th.
And we are also going to talk about potential topics. Does anybody have anything offhand right now they'd like to see us discuss before Dr. Otto and I put our heads together to go over something?
I'll look at last year's agenda and see, where we were.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned, 8:30.